Yeah, we're on. Right. Evening, everybody. And we'll just give it a few minutes and let people come in, but it seems as though everything is working as it should. So we'll give people the chance to get in. I'll just do another post on socials. And then we'll give it a few minutes and then get cracking into this extremely interesting start to the season. Because, yeah. Good evening, Stuart. Just writing up something on Since 71 for this as we speak. Ultimately, there are no winners here, and it's all a bit embarrassing. You are absolutely right, and I'm going to be writing the same stuff for my website at the back end of next week. Okay, right, so, yes, good evening, everybody. This is a very special live episode of the Women's Football Chat because the show that I did yesterday very quickly went out of date because of everything that has been happening over the course of the last 36 hours or so. So I thought I'd jump on and do another kind of a live special, really, get the discussion going and just kind of get everybody up to date with how things have been going then. So, what I thought we'd do first of all, this is a big live discussion. So, I want you to get involved in the live chat, give us your thoughts, give us your opinions, but the golden rule is to be respectful of everybody else's views. Let's not be mean to one another. We can have a perfectly civilized discussion here, respecting everybody else's views, because everybody, I'm sure, will have a different viewpoint. Stuart, look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on ramifications if you know what the handbook says about failure to fulfill fixtures. I've got an idea, but I haven't got anything definitive on that. We'll get onto all of that later. And good evening, Nick, as well. Good to have this live show. Yeah, I felt we really needed it. I really did. So, let's start right back then in mid-June. I've got 2 pages of notes for today. So, 17th of June was the FAWNL AGM. Now, this was the day it was announced the opening day of the season would be this Sunday, the 20th of August. It was first announced by Cheltenham. On their Twitter, who also put out at that time, in that same tweet, that it was the day of the World Cup final. Now, it was raised at the AGM, I'm told, by several clubs, that it was raised at the AGM that it clashed with the World Cup final. So everybody was aware of this long before the fixtures came out. The clubs are saying that the league didn't care about this and told the clubs, you are playing on that day. That is the start of the season. You are playing on that day. The league have said in their statement, and what Carol has told me, the FAWNL chair, that clubs were given options, including delaying the kickoff and postponing the game entirely to a midweek game, principally the following week, which would be the 23rd of 23rd of August, which would be on Wednesday. So that is the situation with what the league said, because the league decides when the replayed game would be. Now, I was told, again, by Carol when I asked her, that the clubs voted unanimously to start on Sunday. So 72 member clubs were there. They unanimously decided to start on the Sunday. And when the first fixtures came out, everybody, apart from the game between Queen's Park Rangers and Chesham, were scheduled for Sunday at 2 o'clock. And it's not definite that was moved because of the World Cup final, though. It could have been other reasons. But people were concerned about all of this, as we know. Fast forward to Wednesday at 12:54 p.m, which was the exact moment that the Lionesses got through to the World Cup final on Sunday. First team to announce a delayed kickoff, Nottingham Forest, did this at 1:15 on Wednesday, so 21 minutes later. That was a delayed kickoff to 4 p.m, and the other teams have generally followed suit to some 2:30, 2:45, 3 o'clock, 3:30, up to 4 o'clock. Only a couple of games as it stands, and that might have changed now since I wrote these notes about an hour or so ago, that are still at 2 o'clock. In fact, I think they might all have moved now. So that's the current situation, in the sense of the women are in the final of the World Cup, and the teams have been moving their games to suit. Now, that's all well and good if you're a home team. If the game finishes at 1 o'clock, minimum of 2 o'clock, latest of 2 o'clock, and your game starts at 4. If you are an away team and you still have to travel and you've got to watch it on the bus or listen on the radio, etc., it's not ideal. As Nick says there in the chat, midweek wouldn't help teams like Halifax or Ipswich with their travel. Ipswich 4.5 hours over to Cardiff, and Halifax up to Newcastle. So what would happen there, Nick, is that we'd have to end up with some jiggery pokery, because those games would have to be on a Sunday. So, for example, you'd end up with Ipswich's game against one of the sides far more local to them, see in that tier. Like a Chatham, for example, would then go to the Sunday, and then the game would move to a midweek, and then that slot would then become Cardiff, but it gets very messy at that point. So, as I said there, it's not ideal for teams who are having to travel away. And so the example I've got from this here is that I asked Stourbridge, who are playing Forest, but I asked Stourbridge because they've always been very good to me on this show and helped promote the show and everything like that. How early before a game do you like to get to the ground? And Andy Fisher, the Stourbridge manager, came back to me and said 90 minutes before kickoff. So for the instance here between Forest and Stourbridge on Sunday, that's 2:30. The journey time is about 90 minutes. So that's 1 o'clock that they would have to leave Stourbridge to get to Nottingham, which is fine if the game finishes in normal time. But when I say it's fine, I mean literally you're standing, or you're all watching the game at a predetermined location with the coach right outside, game finishes, bang, straight on the bus. If it doesn't finish in normal time, they've had it, and that's the similar situation, and even worse for many other teams, in the sense that you've got some teams like Ipswich who have got a 4.5 hour journey. Well, the game against Cardiff has been put back by an hour, but that still doesn't help Ipswich. So that was the situation come Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning. Some teams changing their kickoff. Then we get to late on Wednesday afternoon, and a petition appears, and I'll get the petition up, from the FAWNL players, saying that they are basically calling for all of the games to be postponed so that they can watch the World Cup final. 1,573 is the current level of the signatures. Now, just for reference, if you average 25 players per side in the FAWNL across the 72 teams, that is 1,800. Now, I know there will be some friends and family and staff and co who have taken part and signed this petition, but you are talking about nearly every single FAWNL player in terms of numbers having signed this petition. Then we get to Thursday morning, still repeated calls for teams for the league to reconsider Sunday. I then record on yesterday morning, the show, as I always do. And the show then obviously sits and waits until 6 o'clock. At 1:15, the league released their statement and essentially makes the show obsolete, kind of the reason for this one today. But so much has moved and changed on this in this situation that I thought, better do another one. More games have moved, some have been postponed, and we are now where we are. So what I thought I'd do first, now that was kind of the timeline as what's been happening now. So let's get into some thoughts and opinions here. My Twitter has been going a little bit mad all day. But what I thought I'd do firstly is start by reading the statement from the FAWNL, which, for want of a better phrase, firmly places the blame with the clubs. So, the FAWNL statement, I will skip some of it, but read the important bits. So it said they're aware of comments regarding the league fixtures. For clarity of fact, all clubs voted to accept starting this season on the third Sunday in August as per previous seasons. This fell on the date of the World Cup final. They were given several options, as I've mentioned before. All requests received by the informed deadline, and we don't know when that was, have all been accommodated by the league. However, it has since come to light in a small number of cases due to internal club communication issues and/or lack of communication between clubs, players and their supporters. This information has not been passed on, or club decisions have been made without full consultation with these parties and other club stakeholders to factor in their views. Essentially, they voted for it, but they didn't tell anybody that they voted for it. To enable these clubs to take into account the views of all concerned in order to reach an appropriate consensus, the Women's National League has extended the opportunity for any club that has not already done so to request, with the agreement of the opposition, to move their fixtures scheduled for Sunday to a future date to be advised by the league. So the league gets to pick the future date. All clubs agreed to start the season on Sunday the 20th, and all clubs were given the opportunity to make a request according to their preference with regard to matches scheduled for this date. As with all other leagues' scheduled fixtures on Sunday, we are satisfied the range of options presented to clubs demonstrates our ongoing commitment to effective communication with our membership. Clubs have been strongly advised to ensure they implement similar lines of communication with their own personnel, fans and supporters. We now hope that all who wish to do so can watch England in the World Cup final or enjoy the day as planned. That is the league statement that firmly places the blame with the clubs. The clubs agreed to it, they just then didn't pass all of that on. That is the league line of things. And we have so many different factors now that are going into this. So what has happened today is that obviously this new deadline that came in, we don't know what that new deadline was, like we didn't know what the original deadline was because the AGM is private. So Halifax put out a statement. This was the first thing that really came out today. Halifax put out a statement essentially refusing to travel and saying that they weren't doing it. So surely, because they are failing to fulfil the fixture, there will be a fine and points docked for not fulfilling the fixture. That fine will be in line with the fines tariff, however much that will be. Will there be docked points? Well, that is for the league to determine. Some other clubs have agreed to postpone. The Cambridge Derby is off. Solihull against Boldmere is off. Worthing against Wimbledon is off because of clubs agreeing. Mostly it's because the away team want to cancel it and the home team won't. One exception to that is Southampton Women's against Moneyfields, where in the Southampton Women's statement they wanted to cancel it and Moneyfields didn't agree. And because they can't delay the kickoff because of pitch bookings, which is another factor to consider here. Southampton have postponed the game, so they are up for the fine and possible points for failing to fulfil the fixtures. So that is kind of where we are in a nutshell now. I'd love to know your views on all of this as we get into mine as well. So leave them in the chat. We'll read them out. We'll have a discussion about them. Here are my thoughts on this whole situation. As has been the case before, the league has tripped itself up by being secretive. Now, I am firmly of the belief that the AGM minutes should be published, and that just would allow for greater clarity. Apparently Southampton women are also short on players for Sunday. If the meeting minutes were published, everyone would see what was discussed, because the options offered to the clubs would be written down in the minutes of the meeting. That's the whole point of minutes. And the fact that votes, if it went through unanimously, it would be recorded that it went through unanimously. Everyone would then know where they stood, because at the moment we've got the clubs saying, league are telling us we have to do this, and the league are saying, no, the clubs had the choice to do that. So we'd be able to see what that situation was. Point number 2, regardless of if it was England in the final or not, these games should never have been scheduled for this Sunday. It is the biggest game in women's football. And the fact that these games were ever going to be on, even if it was, let's take some teams that are going to be in there. Let's say it was USA against Australia or what have you in the final in a different world. It would still be the biggest game in women's football. And for a league that promotes itself on pretty much every single tweet, of which there have not been many, on pretty much every single tweet as #heartbeat of women's football, the core of women's football, the lifeblood of women's football essentially, to not just blanket postpone and let the future generations of supporters watch the final, let the players watch the final, is just absolutely ridiculous. Particularly now that there is no set playoff game date for the winners of the two leagues in Tier 3, surely running an extra week into May is not a problem, particularly when inevitably some teams will do that anyway. We saw it last season. The league must finish by the 5th of May, and some teams played on the... No, that's this season, is it? But some teams played on the 7th of May and some went a week later. Nicholas, 11 months ago we postponed football for a period of mourning at short notice. Why can we not postpone at short notice for a celebration of women's football in England? Excellent point, Nick, and that was my next one. When the Queen passed away, blanket postponements were announced on the Friday. But, and it's possibly a big but with this came from the FA, not the individual leagues. That was an FA thing as a whole. But, flip side from that, if you listen to what the league have put out and what Carol has told me, it is FA guidance to start on that day. So if it's FA guidance to start on that day, surely it could be FA guidance to not start on that day instead. Into Tier 5 and 6, the Eastern Region Women's Football League. They are one game into their season. They have already started. They announced this week, I think it was Thursday as well, it would allow teams to postpone this Sunday's game so that people could watch the final. Every single team has postponed their game. There is not any game in Tier 5 or 6 in the Eastern Region Women's Football League on this weekend, according to Full Time. For East Midlands, West Midlands, the Southwest are also not playing this weekend, but they don't normally start until September anyway. Guidance is just that, guidance, not mandated. Yes, exactly. It was guidance and not mandated. Phoebe, good evening, Phoebe. I was going to mention how quickly the Eastern Women's Regional Football League announced their postponements. Pretty much instantly, they were sending out emails to club secretaries. Well, that's, in my view, exactly what should have been done. And the final point kind of against playing. England women have never been to a World Cup final. England men 67 years ago. Who knows when it will next be? Hopefully it will be far more frequent. But it could be one of those moments. Sheffield United have equalised, that's a shame. It could be one of those moments. Everybody knows where they were when England won the World Cup for the first time in 67 years. And also, if you take that progression of all England at a World Cup, first World Cup 1930, that was 93 years ago, and we've been to 2. So that's 1 in every 46 and a half years. Now, hopefully it is more frequent than that, but if England don't reach another World Cup until 2067, in another 46 years' time, I'll be 73 by that point. Don't know how old some other people in this chat and watching this will be at that time. But it is something that potentially, I mean, the World Cup itself only comes around every 4 years. And there's no guarantee you get there. You've got every single footballing nation in the world trying to get to the World Cup final. It's something that might not happen again for a very, very long time. And to miss it is... I can't believe that people are having to miss it. So then we get to the discussion of teams now disagreeing. Now, the game can only be postponed if both teams agree to postpone the game. If both teams can't agree, either the team that doesn't agree, probably the away team in the vast majority of cases, will either have to say, no, we're not coming, and then suffer a fine and a possible points deduction. You would have to think there will probably be points deductions. Or travel and miss the game. Miss some of the game, miss part of the game, travel ridiculously early if the away team... I mean, that was another thing. You've got teams going up against each other now. You've got Newcastle, who said, we offered a private room for Halifax to watch the game in. You've got Chorley, who out and out said Barnsley refused to cancel the game. So you've got clubs now essentially outing other clubs and saying, we wanted to postpone it, they said no, they said no, they said no. Left, right and centre. Now, I can understand why some home clubs who are showing the game and then playing don't want to postpone to midweek. If you can get people through the gates at 10:30 in the morning and they watch the 2-hour game through lunchtime and buy food, buy drink, then the game finishes and they're hanging around, what they're going to do while they hang around, let's have another drink, let's maybe get a burger, then the game happens, it's potentially a very big money spinner for some of these home clubs. They are businesses after all. But my view is that it should be blanket. It should be blanket postponed. And the team should never have been in this situation. The FAWNL, in my view, should have just gone with it and gone, no, we're not playing. Nick, are the FAWNL Management Committee going to be watching the game on a phone listen on a radio instead of at home with friends or family? I suspect they're going to have a rather large TV somewhere. Phoebe, I'd be interested to know how matches being on would impact attendances. Before the postponement, I had to choose between getting up early and watching both matches or missing one of them. It does feel a little childish at this point. I think this is where the FAWNL need to be a grown-up and take control. Well, obviously, this is something we're not going to know until next week, Phoebe, but I do have the attendances from the opening day last season, if I can then find them again. I wrote them all down last night. It's 10 o'clock this morning. Bear with me. Come on. I knew I had it somewhere. I can't find it again now, which is incredibly irritating. It was something like 6,100 people over the 30 games at an average of 214 per game. So next week we'll see what impact that is. Sai has messaged me on Twitter. He says, why was the start date question even proposed to all clubs? Why not just start on the 27th regardless of England's progress? All this would not be an issue if this had been the case. So, yeah, it should never have started off. Phoebe is a Wimbledon fan. 2.5-hour train was not appealing at 9 a.m. No, can completely understand that. And for clarity as well, got Sai, who is a Southampton women's Southampton women's first team assistant manager. They say that they're not short on players. So we've got conflicting views there again between clubs. So yes, Nick's going away to record the Wolves Women podcast now, but we'll carry on for a bit, get some more of your thoughts in. I can't believe, the one thing I can't believe is that the combined minds of the FA Women's National League Board and key members of teams in the FAWNL and the rest of it like that have not been able to come up with what to me is the obvious solution, which is you don't play any games. You either go a week further into May, and I can't see what the issue with that is, or inevitably, when you have some games postponed due to bad weather well in advance, well, not bad weather, that's not far enough in advance, but because of cup runs, because we've got cup games, we've got the determining round next week, we've got cup, we've got plate, we've got county cup, with which teams are being introduced at different times, we've got FA Cup. There are going to be times throughout this season where inevitably the teams that are meant to be playing each other this weekend have both got a free weekend. And they could be played then. But now we're in a situation where some teams are going to, and I know it's going to happen even though I don't have confirmation of it, teams are going to get docked points because they're refusing to travel. And then you're in a situation come May where, we've got relegated by 2 points and we were docked 3 points at the start of the season because we chose to watch England win the World Cup for the first time ever. And then there's all the financial things that are going along with that. And we haven't even talked about money yet. And the fact of coaches that you can't necessarily repay for, programs that you've printed, although you could save them if it was going to be played in midweek, but it's not ideal. Some clubs with catering, some clubs pitch bookings, all the rest of it like that. I just can't believe that we're actually in this situation. The league has made national media today on Sky News because players have been going to all of the media outlets, and I'm not surprised, and I do not blame them for not being able to play. So Sky News wrote a whole article about it. And it just, like Chorley women, for example, we asked for a postponement. Barnsley did not agree. As we understand it, both teams must agree. The alternative is to lose the 3 points as non-fulfilment. They are carrying on playing because they can't afford to lose the 3 points. I suppose it's difficult if you're in tier 3 or tier 4, for example, and you think you've got a shot at going up this season. You're not going to risk the 3 points. If you think you might struggle to stay in the league, you're not going to risk the 3 points. Some teams have stood in solidarity and said, no, we're going to do that. So fair play to them. And that is kind of where we're at, really. So a chance for you to get your thoughts in for me to react to before I finish up. I've been going for half an hour or so now. Couple of other points to note. One really annoying and one happy. We'll start with a really annoying one and finish on a happy note. FIFA president, Mr. Infantino, has come out and said that along the lines of women just need to try harder. It was, I believe, along the lines of what he said here. Get this stuff up. So FIFA president Gianni Infantino had some good news for women all over the world on Friday. This is from Tom Gary, who is a brilliant football writer. Equality is now within women's grasp. They have the power to do it. All women need to do is try harder, because all this time it's been up to women to convince us men what we have to do. Really? It's unbelievable that someone like that is in charge of all of football. Marcus, good evening to you. This is a PR nightmare. I believe that England football tweets yesterday about the grassroots origins of the England players. Understandably, they have deleted the tweet. I mean, this just goes back to what I was saying earlier, Marcus, in that the FAWNL markets itself as the heartbeat of women's football. And I can understand it. 72 teams, really important part of the women's football pyramid. And it doesn't seem that they have... it doesn't feel as though they have the best interests of the teams, the players, the supporters at heart. I bet QPR are glad they're not starting on Sunday with their celebrations of Chloe. I bet that QPR and Chesham are loving life right now. I really, really do. So one bit of positive news then. If you haven't already, and you do have a spare hour, do go on the Liverpool Feds Twitter and watch their hour feature-length documentary about last season. It is brilliant from start to finish. I will forgive them for the bit at the end where they call them Notts Forest. For anyone who is new to this, and I can't believe I'm one episode away from episode 100 of the Women's Football Chat, I did spend a season at Cardiff City Ladies while I was at university, and then joined Nottingham Forest Women after leaving university. Been there for... This is going into my 6th season, although I have cut significantly back on that now. And only go if I've got nothing else on, because I work for the BBC at the weekends as well. But yeah, so if you haven't already seen... So yeah, that's why Notts Forest always kind of grates me a bit. But I'll let them off because the rest of the film is just brilliant. So if you do have a spare hour, maybe in between the final finishing and the FAWNL game you're going to go and watch starting, then have a watch of that, because it is a very, very good film. So if you haven't already, then do please hit the subscribe button, because it would help me out a great deal. Every Thursdays at 6 p.m. is the usual time of the Women's Football Chat. And you can also go onto the website www.womensfootballchat.wordpress.com, and there you will be able to sign up for the FAWNL Predictor League for next season. So it's all completely free, all the rest of it. Basically, you go on, you predict the scores of all of the games. You can either be just in your league, or you can do all 6 if you want, of all of the games, and you get points depending on how well you did. Also, every week, I'll be putting out a weekly article about, might be twice a week actually, on Mondays. That'll be kind of the roundup, weekly roundup. And then on Wednesdays, kind of a bit more of an opinion piece about everything going on in the FAWNL. I wonder what I'll write about this week. But yeah, that's kind of the situation really. So final call for any of your opinions, thoughts, and considerations about the situation on Sunday before we wrap up. I'll give you a couple of minutes to get those in. But yes, follow on Twitter, subscribe on here so you don't miss a single episode of the Women's Football Chat. Haven't thought about anything special for episode 100. Be honest, never thought when I started this 2 full years ago now that I would get anywhere close to that as we start to go in towards season 3 of the Women's Football Chat. But all of the results, fixtures, some interviews, a bit of fun as well with some live draws that we do over the course. I mean, that's the other thing that annoys me with the league is they don't video any of their draws, and I have offered in the past to video draws for them, and it has been politely declined. But at least the quarter-final draw got on TalkSport last season. We'll see if that happens again. But no, it doesn't seem as though there's going to be any more kind of thoughts and opinions coming in. So yeah, I'll round up then, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope if you are going to... Stuart, what is your view on what should happen to clubs who are refusing to play? If I was in charge of the league, they wouldn't have been put in this situation because everybody would have been blanketed. I can completely understand why they are refusing to play. The problem is that because the league have said you've kind of got to play, then if they refuse to play, it goes down as not fulfilling a fixture. Fine and points deductions. I don't think that's what should happen, but I think it's what will happen. What should and what will are 2 very different things. Marcus, if you're unlucky, don't rely on 3, 4 or 5G. Everyone will be watching the game or trying to follow it, yeah. Even if you can find a pub or something to watch it, or a coach with a TV screen or something like that, but I would hate to be one of those players that can't watch it or can watch the first half and then has to go and warm up and as the players said on their thing to do with on their petition, they feel that because players aren't going to be able to prepare properly and as they normally do, it's going to heighten the risk of injury. And I can see that viewpoint. I can. And they're not going to be concentrating. So it's just a situation, and I think Stuart, you said it right up at the start, didn't you? Yeah, there are no winners in this, and it is all very embarrassing. For a league which is trying to grow, trying to appear more professional, it is extremely embarrassing, and the fact that it has got to this situation is, yeah, it's appalling. It really, really is. But yes, that will then about do it for this special episode of the Women's Football Chat, episode number 99. Thank you very much for joining me this evening for the last 40 minutes or so and having this discussion back on Thursday at 6 p.m. But as I said, between now and then, join the Women's FAWNL Predictor League. We've got about 25 people in there so far. and keep an eye on the website for all of the very latest, the league tables, the stats, the results, and some of my opinion pieces as well. Thank you very much for watching and joining me on this Friday evening. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, the weekend, and I hope wherever you are, you do get to see the final as England try to bring it home. The men can't do it, so let's see if the women can. Good night.